At the university, Professor Kanji is busy doing his work when Matsumoto calls out to him to inform him about the arrival of a pharmaceutical company representative to discuss about the joint research. Kanji asks Matsumoto to escort the representative to the meeting area. Later, while Kanji is busy working, he is notified that he had been working for long hours. While trying to get up, he feels faint and dizzy, so he quickly grabs some Calorie Mate and energy jelly and eats them. While doing that, he sees the photo on his desk and remembers how his younger sister, who died of brain tumor, once asked him whether she would get better if she took the medicine. This broke Kanji as he blamed the fact that there should have been effective medicine to save her. He continues working throughout the night and decides to take a 45-minute nap while the process compounds. He falls asleep while hoping to run a town pharmacy someday. Matsumoto comes in the next morning to find Kanji's dead body. Kanji awakens in an unfamiliar room with a maid looking over him. Kanji is dazed and the maid tells him not to strain too hard because he was struck by lightning and hadn't recovered. When Kanji answers, he finds himself stunned by his voice and new body. He quickly stumbles to the window to find himself in a city that looked like it stepped out of a painting. He questions the maid and learns that he's now Pharma Dematicus, the youngest son of the Dematicus family. Kanji realizes he died in the office after working himself to death. The maid notes that Pharma's memories must be jumbled from the lightning strike and reintroduces herself as Charlotte. She makes preparations to help Pharma remove his bandages as he discovers the last thing he wrote down on his arm and rubs it away. As the bandages are removed, Charlotte notices the Panactheo's holy arm on Pharma's arm. As Charlotte gives a tour of the mansion, she talks about Pharma's family. This includes Bruno Dematicus, the Archduke and president of the local college, Paul Dematicus, the eldest son who was studying abroad, Beatrice Dematicus, the mother, and Blanche Dematicus, his little sister. Charlotte mentions that they're nobles because of the divine arts they use. Both Pharma and Charlotte panic when Pharma doesn't remember how to use divine arts. Charlotte warns Pharma that he has to learn soon, or, in the worst case, he could be driven from his estate in shame. Pharma goes back to his room and thinks about the divine arts. He pictures the form of water and the marks on his arms glow. He then produces a ton of water, so he goes to the window to expel it. After stopping it, he spotted Charlotte in the garden, who's delighted that Pharma remembered how to use the divine arts. She decides to join Pharma after getting some dry clothes, and Pharma decides to try out what else he can create. Pharma finds he can create element and compounds while also erasing them as long as he knows their chemical compounds. Pharma is taken to the study where he can read all the books, likely due to Pharma's memories. He also finds that the medical knowledge of the world is stuck in the medieval age. Pharma heads to the dinner table where Blanche, Beatrice, and Bruno are relieved that Pharma is okay. Pharma lets his family know that everything is okay while having to realize he needs to live this boy's life. After being tested by his father, he's allowed to go back to his studies with Eleanor. Eleanor is suspicious of Pharma's placid personality, timidity, and lack of charm. Pharma mentions how he was struck by lightning, and it gets him off the hook. She mentions how nobles have various gods that they pray to, with the Dematicus family worshipping the Panactheos and the Bonifoy family worshipping the Hydrotheos. Eleanor shows off a spear of water and asks for Pharma to do the same. Pharma does so only for the spear of water to be massive in size and blow Eleanor back. She asks how Pharma could do such a massive attack while not doing an incantation. She decides to check out Pharma's mana by using a divinometer. Pharma holds it, and it overloads. Eleanor is startled and asks how it should be possible. She sees the Panacthea's holy mark, and while Pharma tries to call it a Lichtenberg figure, he's proven wrong when she mentions marks don't glow. She also mentions that Pharma should keep this a secret. Pharma then accidentally activates his divine eye to see Eleanor's injured finger. Eleanor is shocked again and scared when it's revealed that Pharma has no shadow. She begs for mercy and falls over. Pharma tries to help her up, but Eleanor runs off screaming. Pharma Dematicus hears from his father, Bruno Dematicus, that Eleanor is out of the cold. He also mentions that Eleanor isn't coming and asks if something happened. Bruno gives him a letter and potion to give to Eleanor. Pharma notices the potion will only have the same effect as a nutrient drink. He makes a new drug for Eleanor to help her with her sickness. He arrives at Eleanor's estate for her to be in a suit of armor. She says that Pharma must be here to kill her for knowing his secret, but Pharma refuses. Pharma offers medicine twice and Eleanor thinks it's poison. Pharma dissuades her fears both times and mentions that he needs her to continue tutoring him. The next day, Eleanor returns to the estate to continue teaching the divine arts to Pharma. He notes that she's still wearing armor, but she says it's a precaution. She thanks Pharma for the gift and takes him to a deserted island to continue learning. Later, Pharma diagnoses the staff with his divine eye and learns more about his abilities. Pharma agrees to treat each of the staff's independent needs. All of them are either surprised or overwhelmed. Later, Blanche comes down with chicken pox and that she has to be isolated for 3 weeks. Bruno hints that Pharma can see her because he had chicken pox already, but warns him about that he could catch it again. Pharma is surprised at Bruno's extensive knowledge. Bruno leaves slightly coughing. Pharma decides to make antiviral cream for her. He goes to see Blanche and gives her the medicine. Blanche begins scratching and Pharma warns her about spreading the virus. A few days later, Blanche makes a complete recovery. Bruno asks about her condition and how she recovered so fast. Blanche keeps Pharma's secret. Pharma begins working on a handheld microscope so he can show bacteria and such to Blanche. He's eventually called by Simon to see his father, who had requested him to see the Queen. Pharma accompanies his father, Bruno, to the royal palace where Her Majesty's condition has turned for the worse. They meet up with Claude, the head physician, and eventually Queen Elizabeth. Pharma makes note of his father's tests and how they turn to the stars. Despite this, Bruno assures the Queen that she'll be fine. Pharma decides to use his divine eye and determines that the Queen has tuberculosis or the White Death. Louis cries for his dying mother, so Pharma steps up saying there's a new medicine for the White Death. Everyone tells Pharma to stop, but the Queen hears Pharma out and agrees to be in Pharma's care. Pharma seals himself in a laboratory and begins creating a 4-drug cocktail. As he's creating it, Bruno bursts in demanding that Pharma should cease his foolishness. Pharma says that a cure does exist and that Bruno will have to take it since he caught it while tending to the Queen. Pharma tries to get back to making the medicine but is stopped by his father's divine arts. He attacks again, but Pharma stops it and makes a barrier of ice. Bruno is stunned, asking who Pharma is and what he means to do. Bruno notices the holy mark of the Panatheos on Pharma's arm, saying that his god granted his blessing to his youngest son. Bruno asks if Pharma is still his son, and Pharma replies that he considers himself to be. Pharma returns to the Queen's bedroom wearing a mask. Pharma brings the microscope he made along with a sample he obtained from the Queen. He helps the Queen see the bacteria causing the White Death through it. Claude and the other physicians see it and are stunned. Elizabeth agrees to take the medicine. As they return, Pharma gives Bruno his medicine to take while mentioning that he helped him understand what needed to be done with patients facing their imminent death. Bruno agrees and they decide to share knowledge as the rest of the family welcomes their return. During the first 3 months of Elizabeth's treatment, Pharma and Bruno exchange information regarding medicine. Bruno mentions that someone was looking for the White Death cure, but he sent the noble on his way. He also mentions that someone may have brought the White Death into the castle. As Pharma leaves, Bruno thinks about one such heretic. Before Pharma sees the Queen, he's pulled aside by Noah, who gossips about what the Empress can reward him with. Pharma has no ideas at first, but then mentions that he wants to open up a pharmacy in the capital to tend to the rich and poor alike. After 3 more months, a ceremony is held for Pharma and Bruno at the royal court. A fully healed Elizabeth grants Bruno the land of Marseille. She also promotes Pharma from apprentice to official royal pharmacist. She also gives permission for him to open his pharmacy in the capital. Later, when asked about what he'll call the pharmacy, he's offered some ideas. He accidentally mutters how his pharmacy would be a parallel world pharmacy, and it becomes the new store title. The chairman of the local pharmaceutical guild, Varon, meets up with Pharma. He attempts to bring down Pharma's reputation only for Pharma to shrug it off. When he tries being more deliberate, he is sent away by Eleanor. Pharma hires Eleanor and Charlotte to work as his staff, but is perplexed on where to find someone who can handle bookkeeping. When coming home, he gets news that Cedric is retiring. Pharma realizes that Bruno let Cedric go so he could be of use to Pharma and is grateful. Later on, Pharma opens up his pharmacy after a long speech that is attended by some nobles and notable commoners. A month after Parallel World Pharmacy has opened has led to only sporadic visits from nobles and merchants. Eleanor isn't surprised given that customers prefer loyalty and nobles prefer convenience. The only regular customer, Jan, comes in looking for water and sailor's candies which contain vitamin C. After he leaves, Pharma's parents check out the shop in disguise. Pharma explains the situation and Beatrice suggests selling cosmetics. Pharma is for the idea since he took part in cosmetic testing in his previous life. Bruno is okay with it as long as white face powder isn't sold. Pharma is impressed with Bruno's knowledge, seeing as how white face powder has poisonous lead and mercury compounds. Pharma decides to get some safer makeup ready in a week. The makeup becomes extremely popular and most of the town goes wild over it. Jean comments on the new popularity, but Pharma brings up a new issue. The supply couldn't keep up with the overwhelming demand. Chloe is aware of this and offers a solution. Open up an independent subsidiary store with Pharma as the proprietor. Midi Cosmetics opens and Pharma is amazed. Chloe introduces the staff, which comprises of older women pharmacists. Pharma visits the Queen Elizabeth, who has heard tales of Pharma's cosmetics. She wants to hear about future cosmetics and is allowed to test a medicated lip gloss. For a summer vacation, the de Mattises family visits Marseille. Eleanor also decides to go swimming as Farm looks back on his old life and how his younger sister didn't get the chance to swim. As Pharma is reminiscing, Blanche is swept into the sea by a large wave. Pharma quickly goes out to sea to rescue her with Eleanor following. Blanche is pulled underwater and Pharma goes through a relapse on being unable to save his sister again. He activates his divine power and eliminates a chunk of the sea. Eleanor and Charlotte are stunned as Pharma gets the 3 people in the water ashore. As Pharma goes to bed, he thinks about how he could have dried up everyone nearby if he wasn't careful. On a rainy night, Salomon hears of Pharma's feats and is keen to eliminate this heretic. When the pharmacy reopens, it's very busy. Pharma tries to help 2 white-robed gentlemen, but they leave. The next morning, a blindfolded horse carrying a cart of sediment ran into the pharmacy as the guard was changing shifts. Bruno calls this an act of war and sends people to investigate. Saverick tells Pharma that no one was hurt and purifies the sediment inside the store floor. Jean comes by with some people to help along with people of the community. Pharma is grateful. A woman then comes by asking for Pharma's help in helping her father. Pharma agrees to go and goes on horseback with the woman. They ride into the countryside, but before Pharma realizes what's happening, the woman is gone. Pharma is then surrounded by the church's inquisition led by Salomon. In a flashback, Eleanor teaches Pharma de Mattises about the temple ranking above even the queen and how they give the power of divine arts to the nobility. She also mentions the Office of Inquisition that takes out evil spirits and heretics that abuse divine arts. Back in the present, Salomon announces himself and demands that Pharma step back. Pharma obeys and is put into a binding circle. It doesn't work because Kanji is not an evil spirit. One of the officers uses fire divine arts, but Pharma creates a nitrogen barrier and eliminates the oxygen to extinguish the fire. Pharma expresses that he doesn't want to harm anyone, but Salomon wants everyone to obliterate him. The officers use a variety of divine arts, but Pharma protects himself with an ice barrier. He blows everyone back while mentioning he wanted to solve this without using violence. Salomon is knocked off his horse and sees Pharma's holy mark. Salomon claims that he didn't see the signs and the person before them was the Panatheos. The officers quickly bow before Pharma and apologize. Salomon is even willing to offer up his life as he broke his leg when he fell off his horse. Pharma looks at Salomon through the divine eye and suggests amputation. Pharma creates a stone examination table and tells everyone that he's going to treat Salomon. Pharma explains the process to Salomon and he gives consent to what he believes is a guardian deity. Pharma creates a spinal tap to eliminate the pain and tests it with a chunk of ice. Once Pharma has completed the operation, he mentions that Salomon's life is no longer in danger and that he can be taken to the temple to recuperate. They comply as the carriage arrives. A few months later, the new head bishop, Salomon, visits Parallel World Pharmacy to the surprise of Eleanor and Charlotte Soler. He explains how he climbed the ladder to become the head bishop to support Pharma and to get rid of any rumors of a shadowless boy in the capital. Pharma senses Salomon's hostility to anyone against him as he notices the extra escort. In the back room, Salomon presents Pharma with a wand known as the Panak Rabdos, a sacred treasure of the guardian deity temple. Pharma wonders if he should carry something that valuable, but when he picks it up, it shines with divine light, proving the sacred treasure has chosen him. It turns out the wand isn't from this world and only a divine entity could wield it. As Salomon's guard leaves, Salomon mentions that the temple will not interfere with Pharma's work. He cannot say the same for those who attack the pharmacy. He also gives Pharma a talisman to hide his divine nature, giving him a shadow. Pharma is delighted and mentions he only wants to walk the same path as his friends and family. While shopping with Blanche, he overhears some commoner pharmacists talking about how Parallel World Pharmacy is considered heretical. They can't sell their products as a result, much to the common folks' dismay. Pharma makes note of this and decides to make a compounders guild to help others sell his products. Later that night, a commoner pharmacist, Jean Allen Gavin, is distraught that he can't heal his sick daughter. As Parallel World Pharmacy continues to profit, the Pharmaceutists Guild continues to decline. Maron continues to blame Pharma as rumors circulate that he sent the blindfolded horse into the pharmacy. Later, Pierre tries to ask one of the doctors in town to look at his daughter, but the office is closed. Pharma happens to pass by and offers his help. They go in through the back entrance where Pierre believes that he had to come this way because he was a commoner. It's when he's told to wear a cloth mask that he realizes that they went in the back way to prevent everyone else from getting infected. Pharma determines her condition to be influenza and tries to make it simple for Pierre. Pharma offers some medicine to help lower Marie's fever. That night, Marie is well enough to leave the pharmacy. As he heads back, Pierre understands why the guild can't keep up. Pierre brings news of his visit to the pharmacy when the guild next meets. Veron immediately calls him out and laments not being able to save his own son. Pierre calls out Veron's selfishness and wishes for the rest of the guild to follow him. Veron doesn't listen and kicks Pierre out of the guild. Later, Pharma comes across Pierre distraught in front of his smashed-up shop. Pharma admits that he had no idea Pierre was running his own pharmacy, as Pierre thinks about moving away to start a new pharmacy in a new country. Pharma reveals that he just got permission to start the compounding pharmacy guild from the Queen. He offers Pierre to join it, and Pierre accepts in tears. Sometime later, Pierre is ready to open up again but is nervous. Marie says some words of encouragement to calm his nerves, and he opens the door. Many customers have come flocking, and Pierre cries tears of joy. Bruno has a dream about Camus' fall from grace. Pharma notices his father's distress, but Bruno says it's not important. Simon gives him a letter from Pal de Medicis, which makes Blanche nervous. Apparently, he was supposed to come for a visit, but it was delayed. Bruno calls Pharma to his office after breakfast. Bruno mentions the San Fleuve Fair takes place next month, where merchants from all over the world come together. Apparently, the Nether Kingdom's colony of Pont Island recently had an epidemic. When researchers went to gather tissue samples, a few of them died too. There are also a few merchant ships from the Nether Kingdom with goods from the island headed there. The only port they can get to offload is Marcera. Pal's letter mentioned after the researchers perished, the lab was sealed off. They were using Pharma's microscope to study the disease. Pharma asks for copies of sketches made, and Bruno agrees. At the palace, Elizabeth talks with her council about how the health of the country has improved over the last year thanks to Parallel World Pharmacy and the Compounding Pharmacy Guild. They debate about rewarding Pharma with the title of Archduke, but he's too young at this point, so they put the reward on hold. At Parallel World Pharmacy, Pharma discusses with Eleanor about the situation involving the Nether Kingdom and how the fair can't be stopped since it's 2 weeks away. Charlotte gives Pharma a note from Pal to him that shows the sketch. Pharma confirms that the disease that infected Pont Island was the Black Death. Pharma and Eleanor send off people from the Compounding Pharmacy Guild to Marcera. They're directed to work with the local governor, Adam, with a plan involving quarantine stations. Pharma then talks with Bruno about the Black Death, and Bruno agrees with him. Pharma and Eleanor explain how they're moving ahead with quarantine stations and medication, levofloxacin. He joins the two of them to talk to Elizabeth. They explain the situation to her, and she agrees to limit the point of entry for merchants. Pharma also asks for permission to inspect the cargo at the gates, while also asking for everyone in the kingdom to kill any fleas and rodents on site, while also boiling their clothes. Elizabeth agrees and sends her minister to send out the edicts, while saying it's her duty to protect her empire and subjects. A bit later, the quarantine stations are set up, and Pierre uses a compound microscope Pharma made. He remarks that 1,000 doses of medicine Pharma provided has been packaged. Pharma is relieved and said that if anyone gets infected, they are to be treated no matter who they are. Pharma and Eleanor head off to Marcera to assist in the examination of the cargo, leaving Charlotte and Cedric in the capital. Meanwhile, an evil spirit wanders through a dead city. At the coastal city of Marcera, Eleanor's students have made sure the ships to stay off the port until they're inspected. They've done a good job as Pharma goes to inspect the ships with Eleanor. On the first ship, he doesn't find anyone with the Black Death, but does notice some sailors with scurvy on board. The noble merchants begin to get impatient and throw food at Pharma's boat. Before Eleanor can retaliate, though, some cannon fire halts the nobles. They come from the Scarlet Fleet, led by Commodore Jean Allen Gabin. Pharma is happy to see him, while Jean hopes to stop by Parallel World Pharmacy again. As the group takes a break, everyone is relieved things are going well. However, Adam comes in saying a ship that couldn't wait and docked in S-Village to smuggle in their cargo. All they know is that the people have left the village, but people are dying in said village. Pharma heads out personally, much to Eleanor's protests. Pharma arrives at the village to find people leaving the village in fear. Pharma wants everyone to stay and be treated, but they see him as the one who cursed them at first. Pharma quickly puts up an ice barrier around the village to contain the disease and says he's there to help them. He divides the village into those seriously ill, those slightly sick, and those that aren't infected. Pharma quickly treats the infected and goes to the hospital where those most severely infected are staying. Meanwhile, at the seas of Marcera, Jean finds the ship that docked at S- earlier to find the entire crew dead. To his dismay, he commands his crew to open fire on the ship to prevent the disease from spreading. Professor Louise Casper wants to help, but everyone ignores her because she's close to retirement. She's aware of this and wants someone to take care of her microscopic studies. She's then called into the president's office. Back in S- Village, Pharma de Medicis goes into the hospital to find some members of the church wearing plague doctor masks. They're suspicious of him until a member of Solomon's Inquisition recognizes Pharma. Pharma conducts an examination, and while several people can be cured with levofloxacin, one passed away and one guy had a common cold. Pharma directs the patient with a common cold to the infected sector with some new clothes and an isolation period. The Inquisition finishes delivering medicine to the patients and are tasked with finding the people who brought the illness in, burning up the cargo and delivering medicine to the infected. At the Academy, Bruno talks with Professor Casper about a special medicine that microorganisms can use to stop the Black Death. The professor is overwhelmed but has plenty of microorganisms to stop the Black Death. Pharma breaks the news that a few of the patients didn't survive, but the head pharmacist of the town is happy that some people are going to live. Pharma leaves Estache Village with everyone needing to stay in town for 2 weeks. Pharma flies down the road to the capital and finds the torch cargo with some tied-up workers being very unhappy. Pharma breaks it to the workers that they have the Black Death while learning that at least 1 crate of white squirrels made it away with 24 workers and 5 holy knights. The holy knights are concerned to the members of the church. Pharma decides to cure all of the workers with the church dealing their punishment later. Pharma also thinks about this bioterrorist attack being similar to when Elizabeth had the White Death. Bruno hears word of the coming cargo and warns Elizabeth of the attack. Meanwhile, Charlotte is handing out masks to everyone and Pierre is looking at samples that come into the capital. He finds a match to the Black Death and hurries to Gate 6 only for the Holy Knights to let loose the squirrels into the city. Pierre hurries to get the guards to sound the alarm as Camus waits in anticipation. News of the bioterrorist attack gets to Elizabeth and Bruno adds that this attack may have been orchestrated by his old Academy friend, Camus behind the Nether Kingdom. Solomon stops the Holy Knights from advancing and seals their divine magic. It's later learned that these knights performed this task because the populace were held hostage by Camus. As they die, Pharma arrives and learns of Camus' attack. When the alarm bells fall silent for a bit, Charlotte goes to check on the pharmacy with Cedric behind her. As the alarm bells come back on, both Cedric and Charlotte are stabbed by Camus, who has become an evil spirit. Bruno and Pharma arrive to see Camus amazed by Pharma's concoctions. Bruno fights Camus while Pharma heals his friends. Bruno falls and Camus turns to face Pharma, who's upset that this man cannot be healed. Camus throws Pharma's concoctions at him, but Pharma is able to eliminate them and punch Camus in the face. Camus warns Pharma that the people won't be able to accept him just as the people didn't accept him. Pharma chooses to preserve their lives as he punches Camus outside and stabs him with the Panac Rabdos. Camus dies as the spell Cleansing Sanctuary is cast. Charlotte hugs Pharma, thanking him for saving her. The battle with the Black Death continued throughout the city as Eleanor finished up the inspection of the ships to Marsara. Pharma developed more treatments for the Black Death, and the Compounding Pharmacy Guild distributed them throughout the capital. 2 months after Camus' attack, the epidemic ends, the fair begins, and Parallel World Pharmacy reopens. Many people come by bearing gifts, including Jean, Alan, Gavin, Pierre, and Solomon. Many people return to the pharmacy as Charlotte welcomes them.